Position to talk about this.
Someone's lived here for 7 years and presumably gotten a work permit and worked here. If their asylum claim is denied, are they really going to be deported, or is that just a problem for the next president?
Again, I'm not going to get into hypotheticals about specific cases. He does believe we need, and he has worked to increase legal pathways to citizenship. But obviously, illegal pathways, you need to be held accountable if you're trying to come into the country illegally.
Is the president thinking this far down the line? I mean, people are being given court dates 7 years from now. So is he creating a big problem for another president to have to figure out? If these people are going to be deported after just working, living, maybe having families here for 7 years?
Again, I'm not going to get into hypothetical cases here. On day one of the administration, the president put to Congress a proposal for immigration reform. He has said in recent days he's willing to have a serious discussion with members of Congress about immigration policy. So let's see where that goes. But he's taken the issue very, very seriously. Thanks everybody.
Question. People are being given court dates in 2031.
Thanks, Admiral. Happy holidays. Gazi.
Thanks, Karine. Traditionally, the president will hold a press conference and talk about his record, make the case directly to the American people, defend some of the policy actions taken. The president, December 21st, doesn't seem to be doing that this year. Can you explain why he doesn't want to defend his record to the American people and make his case for his record to the American people directly?
Well, I think that anytime the president travels and is in front of the American people, he does that. He did that in Wisconsin when he talked about Bidenomics. He talked about small businesses and how that's a pillar of Bidenomics and investing in America. So you heard him do that directly to the American people. Look, he does we make an effort to do a press conference as often as possible, whether it's here at home or abroad. As you know, he held a 2+2 with President Zelensky, which I think was an incredibly powerful, important moment for the American people to see what we have been doing to help the brave people of Ukraine fight against tyranny, fight against the aggression from Russia. And you saw him do that right alongside President Zelensky. And so, you know, the president certainly was very engaged with members of the press corps yesterday who traveled with him. He engaged with them 3 times, took questions, made a statement, really important statement about Venezuela and the hostage situation. And so this is something that we really make an effort to do, and we will continue to do that in 2024. Do as many as press conferences as possible abroad and at home.
Sorry, can you tell me, you mentioned do as many as possible. What's the president? It's nothing as public schedule. They obviously had a phone call this morning. I'm just wondering if you can, characterize why you can make time on the president's calendar whenever you want.
Well, he made time yesterday to talk to the press. Yesterday, he did. He talked to them. We made time to make sure that he gave a statement about what was happening in Venezuela, the hostage exchange, the swap that you all saw that was very successful. He made time to do that. He stood in front of the press pool in front of him and made that statement and took some questions. He did 2 other gaggles yesterday. So he certainly engages with the press, and he'll continue to do that. And yesterday, he spoke directly to the American people about Bidenomics, really showing what Bidenomics has done, what he's done the last 2 years. And I think that's important as well for the American people to hear directly from him. And we will make the effort to do press conferences here, at home and abroad as well, just like we did last week with President Zelensky.
And on a different topic, on the situation on the border, John Kirby a few minutes ago said that the U.S. probably could be doing more to deal with the situation there. What more should the White House be doing, and what more has the president been doing to address the situation we've seen over the last week or 2, especially with slave search?
So I think one of the things I think he meant by that is when we did the emergency supplemental, the national security component of that, it had a border security request, right? And that because the president understood that we did need to do more. And that's why he asked for very important emergency funds to do just that. And what you're seeing, certainly from the Senate side at this time, I know they had decided to go home, but those conversations to get border security, to get that bipartisan agreement continues. And we encourage Congress to get to that as soon as possible, certainly when they get back. So Obviously, we're having those negotiation conversations to get more funding because we understand, the president understands that we need to do more. And as it relates to what we're seeing, the flow of migrants that we're seeing at the border, DHS is maximizing its enforcement efforts. That is important. And the thing that is also, is important is the message that we have to send to smugglers, right? We have to be very, very mindful because they also put out misinformation. So we try to be mindful there as well. And what we're seeing here at the border, the migration flow, increased migration flow, certainly it ebbs and flows. And we're at a time of the year where we're seeing more at the border. And it's not unusual. This is an immigration system that has been broken for decades, and the president has taken this very seriously to try to do more. That's why we have the comprehensive immigration policy legislation that the president put forth on day one. So yes, there is more to be done, but we need the help of Congress to get that done.
And it's nothing the president can do himself unilaterally to sort of reach
Look, we asked for more border patrol, right? And he was able to get 24,000 more border patrol folks, law enforcement folks at the border. That's unprecedented. We asked for more. And you got Republicans in Congress who, especially in the House, who want to cut that. They actually want to do the opposite of what the president is trying to do. And so, look, the president has done everything that he can, right, on his own. There's clearly diplomatic conversation happening with AMLO and other folks, other leaders in the region. We're going to continue to have those conversations just to make sure that we deal with the flow. But we also need funding. We also need funding to deal with the border security, which is what we're trying to do right now with these negotiations that are happening with the Senate, with senators right now. Okay,
just to follow up on that, you said the president has done everything he can on his own on this issue. The letter from House Speaker Johnson suggesting otherwise, that there are specific steps that can be taken. Do you see anything in what he suggested that you would be open to?
So I heard the letter. I have not read the letter, so I can't speak to the letter. They decided to go home. Let's not forget. Before the Senate did and did not participate, right? They wanted to push forward our H.R. 2, which as we have said, it doesn't help the border, actually makes it worse, cuts costs, cuts law enforcement. It does not help at all. And so, look, we are having those conversations doing the Senate negotiations, and we want to make sure that we come to a bipartisan agreement. We understand that. We understand to actually deal with this issue, we need a bipartisan agreement, which is why the president put forth a comprehensive immigration plan, legislation to be even more clear on the first day. And so I can't speak to the letter. I've not seen it. I heard about it when I was coming out, but I cannot speak to what Speaker Johnson has laid out in the letter.
And just very specifically in terms of the conversations that Biden had with the Mexican leader today, or in these conversations that are going to be happening in the coming days, is the remain in Mexico policy something that is at all on the table in those discussions?
So I'm not going to go into the detail of diplomatic conversations that the president is having. We're going to do.
You won't rule it out.
I'm not ruling anything out from here. I'm not going to negotiate from here. That's not what I'm going to do, or lay out what is on the agenda from here. The conversations continue. Obviously, it takes diplomatic conversation like the president is having with the president of Mexico to deal with the flow that we're seeing coming into the border. So we have to actually have those conversations, and that's what the president is doing, and he's been doing that the last 2 years, and that's what you're going to see. I'm just not going to get ahead of that.
One quick one. Senate sent back Julie Sue's nomination. Are you okay with her continuing in an acting capacity in 2024, or do you want to force a vote on this issue?
So look, we believe, and we are going to be very clear, Julie Sue will be renominated of Secretary of Labor in the new year. That is something that we are committed to. And as it relates to her acting authority, look, because she was confirmed, and you've heard me say this before, by the Senate as Deputy Labor Secretary, she is able to continue serving as acting Labor Secretary. So we see her performance as admirable. And we think she is doing a great job in that role. And so we urge Senate to take action, swift action, to confirm her as secretary. Certainly, she will be renominated, and we are certainly committed to that. Okay.
Thank you. Appreciate it. You talked about the supplemental request to Congress for more funding when it comes to the border, but we also hear all the time from Republicans that it's not just about funding. They want these policy changes. I understand you don't want to negotiate from the podium, but can you tell the American people if there's any immigration policy that this White House is willing to talk about and is working on with Republicans?
So I want to be really careful as negotiations happen. We don't want to do this in the public, right? It does not help the process. And so we want to make sure that those negotiations are happening. Obviously, we're part of those negotiations with the senators. We think it's going in the right direction. We want to make sure that we get to a bipartisan agreement. It's incredibly important. The president understands. He understands that we have to fix this immigration system. It has been broken for decades now. And so we have to do everything that we can to fix that system. And so we're going to have those conversations. And you're right, it's not just about funding, it's also about policy discussions that they're having. And so don't want to get ahead of it. And let's not forget, this is a president that has had these types of negotiation, or been part of these types of, his team certainly has been part of these types of negotiations for some, in different, obviously in different subjects and legislation. So that has happened for the last two almost 3 years, and they've been successful. So we're going to continue to do that and stay steadfast on that.
Just following up on that, is it fair then to say that the White House thinks there will likely need to be some change to the asylum system?
I'm not going to get into specifics from here, but we understand that there needs to be a bipartisan agreement, right? And so when you have a bipartisan agreement, right, both sides have to decide what they are willing to move forward with. I just want to be super mindful and let the team that are doing the negotiations do that themselves. And when they're ready to share what they've decided on, we will certainly talk about that.
You started talking about accomplishments from this last year. You talked about the economy. But in our latest ABC News poll back in November, by a 10-point margin, Americans still said that they would trust Republicans on the economy more. So what is your message to Americans who just think what you've done on the economy is not enough?
Look, we understand what Americans have gone through. We do. They went through, and you've heard me say this many times before, and my other colleagues, coming out of the pandemic was a tough time, a difficult time for so many Americans. And we understand it's going to take some time for them to feel the accomplishments and what we've been able to do in the last 3 years. That's not something I say, that's something that economists have said, right? It's going to take some time. What we can do is what the president did yesterday, right? He went to Milwaukee, Wisconsin, spoke directly to the American people, people who live in Wisconsin, people who live in Milwaukee, to talk about what Binomics has done. He actually lifted a very important pillar of Binomics, which is small business, and there's been 14 million new applications this administration started on small business. That's important. That is investing in America. 14 million jobs created under this president. We have unemployment under 4%. All of those things matter. We see inflation is moderating. That's important. And so, look, we're going to continue to talk about it. We understand that Americans still feel things are unaffordable. That's something that the president said recently, and we're going to do everything that we can to lower costs. That's why we talk about junk fees, right? And that's why we talk about health care and making sure that we're lowering prescription drugs. As I said at the top, fighting big pharma. All of these things are important, and we just have to continue to speak to it. Okay.
With the Congress being out now and not coming back until the first week or so after the start of the new year, they're going to be confronting a perfect storm of funding battles on Capitol Hill. 2 deadlines, supplemental budget requests on top of that, continuing resolutions that are expiring. Is the White House concerned about whether it's going to get anything accomplished in terms of Ukraine funding, for example, and the whole border security issue, while all of these funding issues are coming up at the same time?
So look, I'm going to be really simple and to the point. These are important priorities for the American people. That's what Congress needs to understand. They're important priorities for the American people. Everything that you just listed. And Congress needs to take action. They need to take action. I will leave it to congressional leadership on the calendar and procedure and how they're going to move forward. But these are important actions that American people need. Okay.
Does the president plan to invite Speaker Johnson for a one-on-one meeting in the Oval Office in the new year?
I don't have anything to lay out on a potential meeting with the Speaker.
Is there a reason that hasn't happened yet?
I just don't have anything at this time. I don't have a reasoning for it. I just don't have anything to read out. As you've known, they've spoken before. Our team here at the Office of Legislative Affairs, obviously, and other senior leadership here at the White House have been in touch with his, if not his team himself. And so that is continuing certainly continuing conversation. We speak to many members of Congress, whether they're Republican or Democrat. I just don't have anything on the president's schedule about a
White
meeting.
House have a response to this significant violent rhetoric that targeted the Colorado Supreme Court justices and Democrats following that ruling that would keep Donald Trump off the ballot there? Some of that violent rhetoric has come directly in response to his own posts on social media, but there were concerns raised about that and that spreading on social media. On violent language and rhetoric in response to that, targeting specifically the Supreme Court justices in Colorado.
Well, we've been always very clear. Any intimidation, any violent rhetoric or violence, we're certainly going to denounce that and say it's inappropriate. And so we're going to be very, very clear. Any form of violence is inappropriate and obviously dangerous. And that is something that we're going to speak out against.
Thanks. Does the president have any plans for the third anniversary of the January 6th attack on the Capitol?
As you know, I think the president has done something, I think the last 2 years of his administration on January 6th, and spoken certainly to the importance of our democracy. I don't have anything to lay out today as to the president's plan for January 6th. Okay.
Thanks. The White House put out a statement about the meeting on Tuesday with senior administration officials and the CEOs of the companies that make the RSV vaccine for infants. Last week, the manufacturers had said they could have an additional 230,000 doses available in January. With that meeting this week, was there any new commitment from these companies? Did they say they could produce even more vaccines in this winter season if that's needed?
So look, we've been very clear. We think families should have access to the RSV vaccine. It is important for families to have access to that. We're going to continue to do everything that we can to make sure that we urge manufacturers, right, to produce and release enough RSV vaccines that meet the demand that we're seeing, especially at this time. And so that work we're going to continue. We're going to have those conversations. And we were glad to see the manufacturers announce an additional 230,000 vaccines that families need. And so we're going to continue to have those conversations. We want to see more. We want the needs to be met at this time. And so all I can say is that we're going to continue to have those conversations. We want to make sure that everyone who needs a shot gets a shot.
So was that meeting this week just to follow up on what they had announced last week?
I mean, look, we have continued conversation with manufacturers, because we know how important it is to meet the demands that we're currently seeing, right? So that is going to be conversations that are going to continue from not just from this week moving forward to make sure that those needs are met and we have the vaccines, the RSV vaccines that families need. It is important. Families should have access. It is critical for families to have access to RSV shots. Okay, Josh.
The journal reported today that the U.S. is considering raising tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, as well as other kind of similar products like batteries and solar panels. Can you give us an update on that and/or speak to the ongoing review of the China tariffs and when the president will make a final decision on them?
So a couple of things. This administration continues to conduct its statutory review of the Section 301 tariffs on Chinese products. This review, as you know, is led by USTR in partnership with the interagency partners and stakeholders. We are taking a strategic, thoughtful, deliberative approach to a bilateral economic and trade relationship with China, and that certainly applies to our review of these tariffs. I just don't have any additional updates, but that has certainly been the path that we have taken on this.
Weeks, months?
Just don't have a timeline, but that's the updates that I can share with you.
Can you speak earlier this week? There was conference board data that showed rising consumer sentiment. You've alluded to this in one of your earlier statements. Does the White House believe that inflation will continue going down and that sentiment will continue improving, or do you believe it's too soon to say? We got into trouble, a year or so ago with transitory this or that. I just want to be clear on how you're viewing this moment here.
So look, as you know, inflation fell to the lowest level in 3 years. That's important. Consumer confidence is at the highest level since July, and the second highest level in 2 years. And so we're glad to see that Americans are feeling more confident about the economy. And as you know, I think a year ago or just 6 months ago, there was always this talk about recession, and that is certainly not where we're heading. And so we've always said that we're at a transition here. to a more stable and steady growth, and that's kind of where we're going. And we're going to do everything that we can to make sure that inflation continues to moderate. And I think that's a good path. That's what the American people want to see. And at the same time, lower costs for Americans, because we know that that's important as we talk about Bidenomics and the economy.
Great. So quick point of clarification on the Ukraine aid. Is the United States considering pulling from its own stocks to send to Ukraine without replenishing them? Or is the aid package that we expect to come in the next week or so the final one until Congress gives the United States more authority?
I mean, look, we've been very clear. There's one more final aid that we can give to Ukraine.
If the United States doesn't replenish its own stocks.
Look, what I can tell you is we're doing, one of the reasons why we ask for additional aid is because we're running out, right? We are running out of aid to support the brave people of Ukraine. And what we've been able to do, and you've heard this from the Admiral, we've heard this from the National Security Advisors, we have kind of lessened, made that aid that we've announced the last couple of weeks or last couple of months smaller and smaller, because we don't have any more. This is it. And so that is where we are. That's why we asked for emergency funding. That's why we asked for that supplemental, because we need to make sure that Ukraine continues to fight for their democracy. And that's really where we are. That is where we are today. All right. Last one. Okay. Go ahead, Jared.
Thank you. Angola announced today that they're leaving OPEC. I was curious if there was an administration response, as maybe it relates to energy prices, and if it was an issue that came up when Angola's president met with President Biden 3 weeks ago.
So, as you know, we're not a member of OPEC Plus, so you would have to speak directly to the government of Angola.
More either. That's why I was.
Well, I'm just saying we're not members. We're not. Good point. But we're not members of OPEC Plus. That is not something that I can speak to. You would have to.
It come up in conversations.
I can't go beyond what the readout was from that conversation, but obviously we are not members of OPEC Plus. So you have to talk to them about that. All right, thanks, guys. We're going to have something later on for you today on that, but as we normally do. Right.
You want to say what?
Oh, what? Oh, you wanted me to say something Christmassy?
Come on, his plans around the.
Is this plan? Oh, we'll have a week ahead. We'll have a week ahead. Well, we will share a week ahead. I thought you wanted something from me. I would say happy holidays. Hope to see you. Happy New Year. It's always good to see you all. Enjoy, be safe, and enjoy your time with your family. See you next year.
You too.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.